entire globe, involving hundreds of different cultures, explaining the same phenomenon by different names.
The nature of the footprints, namely their remarkable consistency, their biomechanical appropriateness, those aspects that are extremely compelling.
Hey, Shane.
Hey, Tim and Dana. Thank you so much for the very kind intro. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Yay. I love your background. That is super cool. Super cool. You got all the appropriate stuff back there.
I got many more walls just like this in this room.
That is so awesome. Because what is that room?
It's my game room / Sasquatch room. So a lot of paraphernalia in here and Sasquatch stuff. So it's kind of a focal point in my house.
Very cool. I love it. So Tim had mentioned in the intro. So you're from Scotland. You obviously don't have a Scottish accent. Thank God, because we wouldn't be able to understand you.
She subtitles. I mean, I can understand it, but
no,
she
I
subtitles
always have.
movies.
I lived in Italy for 8 years, years and years ago, and I had a bunch of friends of mine from different countries, but we all spoke English because we were English teachers, and I was so excited because we were going to go to a film in the original language English, and I think it was that movie called Train Spotting, and it was filmed in Scotland, and I found myself reading the Italian subtitles because I couldn't understand the English that was being spoken with a Scottish accent. So yeah, it was definitely interesting. So you were born there, and
yeah, I was
then
born in.
When did you move over to the States? Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was born in Glasgow, and I think a lot of Train Spotting was filmed in Glasgow and Edinburgh, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, the accents are thick. You wouldn't understand my dad even till this day. But lived on a little island off the west coast of Scotland in the Hebrides called Isla, just a little tiny island off the mainland of Scotland. Moved over to the U.S., Southern California in '93. And over a couple of years, I sought to lose my accent because people couldn't understand me.
Right. And so in 1993, if you don't mind, how old were you?
I was 13.
Okay, wow. So you had already lived a good part of your life there.
Yes, yeah.
So
indeed.
That's pretty amazing that you've picked up the American accent. I'm not even hearing a slight anything going on. So that's pretty amazing.
And you didn't pick up the Southern California accent either.
No, I haven't done that. No, no, but I did learn to speak, lose my dialect. And so that, it was an issue growing up. The girls loved my accent. The guys, not so much. So it was a lot of, a lot of little tips. And I thought, I need to lose this accent.
Right. So how often do you go back to visit?
Not very often.
Okay.
I have plans. I do have plans to go back here shortly. My daughter is 11 and is yet to see where I grew up. And I have an absolutely huge amount of family over there, all over Scotland, England, and in a few in Ireland. So I want her to experience where I grew up and see another side to the family that she's not seen, but hopefully get back soon.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, we want to do that too.
We would like
I've
to
never
go.
been, and we've got both have some family heritage from there. And
I have family heritage.
You do, got to, yeah.
Okay.
Your sister's, yeah.
No,
you guys have it.
She's
she's
Norwegian.
Your sister.
Okay.
She's not Norwegian.
We're all Norwegian.
Yeah, all
the
of us,
Vikings
yeah.
kind of just
they just
spread their seeds everywhere.
So is that where you got into paleontology? Is that what kind of inspired you, just growing up in Scotland?
Yeah, absolutely. I always had a fascination with dinosaurs, and my original passion was paleontology. I used to write to literally a physical letter to Edinburgh to some prominent paleontologists, and they would write a letter back to me, and it really sparked my interest in that. And then eventually looking at things like Loch Ness Monster, Nessie, and other cryptids. I've always had a passion for dinosaurs, like I said, but it kind of moved into the existence of other unknowns, or the possible existence of supposedly extinct species.
That's cool. And and before I'm kind of bouncing around here because you were in Southern California. Now you're in the Pacific Northwest. The mountain ranges go all the way down there. I mean, we had Eli Watson on here, and we were just chit-chatting about the mountain ranges from Southern California. I think some people don't understand that there's activity down there too, where you used to be, right?
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Eli. He just spent a week up here. We were doing a filming project, which will be out on YouTube sometime down the road. So we discussed that very thing. At least the past history on Sasquatch being down there in not just Southern California, but all the way up through California, and the possibility that there is Sasquatch still in some of those areas, Southern California being, areas like Idlewild and Palomar Mountain and the San Bernardino Mountains and the Los Angeles, forests, and the Cleveland Forest down there, National Forest, and then moving up towards Central and then Northern California. And as you said, Tim, the mountain range travels up and down this side of the coast. It's pretty amazing.
So let's go back. So you're a kid in Scotland. You're 13. You move to the States. You grow up a bit. What got you interested in the Bigfoot phenomenon?
Yeah. So my mom actually got me interested in cryptids in general. I was looking into, she'd get me books. The few programs that were available, I'd watch over there. Mainly, I was just visiting the library and getting my hands on every kind of book I could, because my mom kind of sparked my interest in it when I started looking into the Loch Ness Monster, the Yeti, Mapinguari, Mokulemembe, all these different worldwide cryptids. And so, Sasquatch was always of high interest to me, having seen the Patterson-Gimlin film. Never been to the States. I was very interested in the Sasquatch phenomena, not knowing that one day I would end up in the States and, in one of the Mecca states in the U.S. For Sasquatch reports, activity, and history. And so, it wasn't until I got to California that I really started kind of delving a little bit deeper into the Bigfoot thing and learning more and more of the phenomena.
So I'm sorry. So when did you move? So when did you move to the area that you're in now, which is in Washington State?
Yeah. So actually, I moved to Oregon first. I lived in a town called Beaverton, Oregon, for a number of years, which I moved from California to Oregon in 2008. And I did a lot of research up in the Mount Hood area of Oregon, and in the Tillamook Forest in Oregon. Eventually, and I moved up here. I had met my wife down in San Diego, and she's from Oregon. That's what brought me up to Oregon. And I was very excited to move here. Having visited once or twice before. I loved the area. I loved the history, and just the chance to get out and conduct research in areas that I wasn't familiar with. And 2017 is actually when I moved up to Western Washington.
So it's just so cool that you moved into like squatchier areas, obviously, than San Diego, which, just makes your research possibility so much broader. So what an awesome thing to do. And
well, first tell your wife I'm sorry I didn't wear my University of San Diego shirt. I should have done that for this episode.
Yeah, because we were talking to Shane before. Our son actually went to University of San Diego, and so did his wife.
So not my wife, Shane's wife.
No, Shane's wife.
I know. When you said so Shane, but you were talking to witnesses in Southern California before you were talking to them up north, right?
Yeah. Not so much Southern California. I did reach up to a few. A lot of the reports down there were older, like the Zubies, that is fairly well known out of Alpine. There was an individual I talked to up in Cuyamaca, which is eastern San Diego, that had a possible sighting, though at the time I couldn't rule out bear. It was hard to track down individuals, and we're talking, 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. It was hard to find a lot of recent stuff. I didn't really have, I knew of the BFRO and whatnot, but I didn't have a whole lot of access to a lot of that stuff at that time to contact witnesses. But
so I'm
most
sorry,
of the,
Shane. So your reasoning for contacting witnesses was you were just trying to, for our viewers, just so they get an idea of how you went from being interested into being a researcher.
Yeah, no, great question. I was just trying to document reports so I could put a map down
on your own. Cool.
Yeah. I didn't know anybody at that time. I didn't know one soul that was into research at that time. I knew of people, especially in Washington and in Northern California and Oregon and places like that. But I was just, a one-man band at that time, just trying to collect information, trying to see if there was validity to any of these reports in those areas. If they were just historical or if they were still present, if Sasquatch was still present in some of these areas. And so it really wasn't until I started traveling north towards like Yosemite, Bishop, Big Bear, that I started getting in a little bit more, I say, fresher reports, more current reports, and that in areas also that I thought this is a more viable location for Sasquatch to reside in.
Mm-hmm.
How many witnesses do you think you've talked to over the years?
Oh, shoot. Over the years, I don't know if I could put a number. I don't know, a couple hundred.
Okay, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
Is there any of those, or I'm sure some of them have, can you mention one or two that really stood out to you that really kind of got you thinking or blew you away?
The one that comes to mind was one of the first reports that I took in that was fairly fresh and kind of came from a very reliable source that wanted, even at that time, to not go on the record with their name. But while I used to do a lot of camping in Yosemite, backpacking around, and I got talking with a female park ranger that happened to be up around El Capitan, which is a large rock face up there. It's really popular for rock climbers to come around the world. And if you ever stood below El Capitan, it's absolutely massive. You see these people up on, climbing it, and it takes them, days to get up to the top. They'll even sleep on rock faces, tying themselves in. They look like ants from the ground.
Wow.
There was a park ranger there. I was unabashed at that, even at that time. Hey, do you guys ever hear any Bigfoot or Sasquatch reports in this area? And she said, well, matter of fact, about 2 years ago, this was it wasn't right away. I had to kind of drag it out of her a little bit, but she had reported that she was down below, I think it was the Awani Hotel at the time, somewhere near there, and had something throwing rocks at her, and thought it was somebody pulling a prank on her, trying, she didn't know what was going on, but these rocks were coming at her, smaller than a baseball. And when she looked up on this rock facing, she saw something reddish in color fleeting away on two legs. And that was 2 years prior to me talking with her. And that report, it shook her at the time. She didn't know what was going on. She didn't tell a whole lot of people. She talked to another park ranger, and he said, well, it's probably a bear. And she's thinking to herself, well, bears don't throw rocks. It was an arcing throw. It wasn't rocks falling straight down from this ledge. It was arced at her. And so that really stuck out with me. Here I have a park ranger and she'd been working there for, I think, 12 or 13 years, never had anything happen like that. And then one day, boom, she has an unexplained experience, saw something that was, reddish in color, which didn't match really the bear in that area. And there's a lot of black bear up in that area, and predominantly they're black. I think there's a couple of blondish ones been seen up in there, but she described this thing as walking on two legs and reddish in color. And so I started keying in on going up to Yosemite as much as I could, which is a good 12 to 13 hour drive from where I lived. I never really found anything of interest while searching those areas up there. I never found any really good tracks. Said a lot of black bear up there. a lot of bear tracks and other species, but I still thought I was in the right area, but I wanted that, I wanted the experience, but I also wanted to find something of substance and not just come away with another possible encounter from someone else.
And did she mention the size? I mean, obviously she's probably used to seeing climbers going up and down. Did she say anything about size?
Just that it was larger than a human. She thought it was larger than a human bipedal. She didn't really give me like 6 centimeters.
But she would know, in other words, though, because
Yeah.
she's used to seeing
12 to 13 years working in the park. Yeah. So yeah, I would assume she could differentiate in size and if it was a person. It made no sense to her at the time where the rocks were coming from, why a person would be in this particular spot.
Wow. That's fascinating.
And it's that same old rock throwing characteristic that we hear a lot of stories about.
Right, because Shane, is there anything else that can do that besides a human? With throw that,
Not that I'm aware of. You get animals like squirrels and raccoons that can drop stuff. I don't think squirrels can toss stuff. And we're talking about the size of these rocks thrown. I mean, they're not always large. Sometimes they're pebbles. Sometimes they're pine cones thrown. But I've heard reports even in the area that I had interest around Mount Hood where there was supposedly a crazy black bear throwing rocks, as these people stated, but they had no idea what to call it. They saw a large dark figure, and that was the only thing they could come up with was it was a large bear. But no, rock throwing is very common. I've had a lot of reports like that. I've experienced rock throwing not too long ago, and we could talk about this later. But Chris Spencer and I were out camping, and on one of our therms we had placed out around our camp, we had a rock come into our camp in between our tents, and it had an arc. We're quite a ways from the tree line, and you could see this thing arc in on the thermal camera. So, it's a very common report, from researchers to laymen to hikers, fishermen, explorers, that they have rocks thrown at them.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there's no other primates, supposedly there's no other primates in North America except humans. So apparently. Yeah.
Right.
So actually, so you mentioned Chris Spencer. Actually, before we get into that, how much time are you in the woods? I mean, how much time do you dedicate, for your personal time?
Yeah, a lot. I'm in the woods every couple of days, if not longer. So, there's not a week goes by that I'm not in the woods spending either a couple of days or even just a couple hours. I try to spend as much time in the woods as I can. Obviously, I'm into the Sasquatch phenomena, so that's a huge portion of what I do in the woods. But also, I love being out in the woods, hiking, exploring, and I'm also an avid hunter, so I'm always looking for a sign of my quarry. So and that's why I moved to Western Washington. I fell in love with this area, and I have access right out literally my back door to trails and remote areas.
That's so cool.
Jealous.
I'm so jealous. People are so jealous because we live near the beach, but
yeah, we have woods behind us, but it's like a quarter of an acre, a quarter mile thick, not a quarter acre.
I know, we're so excited to have that.
But we do at least have something.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate because I'm very close to the Puget Sound, so I have beach access and saltwater access, but then I have all these rivers that connect to this area, so I have freshwater access, and then a stone's throw away I have the Olympic Mountains and stuff. So I got a little bit of everything up here.
Let's move.
Okay.
You
got room in your house?
Come on up.
So tell us, Shane. Tell us what the group you're involved in. Is called the Olympic. So tell the audience.
Yeah, and how you got there, and why you joined, and everything.
Who are you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the Olympic Project is just a group of like-minded individuals from all walks of life. We have a lot of girls and a lot of guys involved in this. We have academics that are a part of the Olympic Project, and then we have just avid researchers, investigators, and enthusiasts involved with the Olympic Project. But we are all of like mind. We all have the same sort of goals, the same agendas. We're all data-driven. That's kind of our goal, is to collect as much data as we possibly can on the subject I can speak for most of the Olympic Project that knows to exist. We do have a few open-minded skeptics, which is great, but they're very open to looking into this phenomena. They're excited about it, and they want to delve into it. So we have a great group of individuals that get out and document and experiment in the woods, looking into Sasquatch. I joined the Olympic Project in 2012. Derek Randall's invited me, and I had been corresponding with him, and I had corresponded with Cliff Barrickman a little bit before I met Derek on some stuff I had happen. But it was when I met Derek Randall's down at an event called Hopsquatch that Guy Edwards used to put on down there in Portland, Oregon, that I met Derek for the first time and went out on one of his public expeditions. And it was amazing. It was a great trip. I learned a lot. Derek and I really bonded, knowing that we had the same goals, same agendas, the same humor, the fact that we loved the outdoors. And so we connected, and it wasn't too long after that he invited me in. And I'll tell you that the thing that blew my mind with the Olympic Project at that time was just I used to think that I was conducting proper research, whether it was California or Oregon. I'm like, well, I'm a researcher, I'm a researcher investigator. When I joined the Olympic Project and realized the amount of work they were putting into it, and both in the field and out of the field, I realized that documentation, data collection, looking for patterns was a huge part of that. And I immediately fell in love with that. I thought, wow, this is substance. This is something not just I can look at, but others can look at, that we can share. And so I started really, really hitting the ground, going, okay, this is conducting proper scientific research. This, utilizing the scientific method, and not just looking for tracks all the time or looking for this. It's about proper documentation, observing everything around you and documenting it, whether it's the weather, the moon phase, the terrain, the animals in the area, the food sources, the elevation. That really brought me to the realization that there's more to research than just looking for tracks and talking to witnesses.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So would you say that, obviously you've had some experiences. Can you describe some of the experience that you witnessed yourself?
Well, prior to meeting Derek and talking to Cliff, I had a 2-night experience up in the Mount Hood National Forest with two buddies while we were out hiking remote backpacking lakes. Not a Bigfoot trip, just a couple of guys, a couple of coworkers and I going out and going to an area we had never been. And one of my passions is fishing. I love fishing. I love fishing rivers and lakes. And the harder to get to, the better. And so, I had basically a 2-night experience with these two gentlemen, friends of mine. And basically the second night is when I saw one of these things, and it solidified the existence of Sasquatch for me 100%, and scared the bejeebies out of the other two guys.
Great. Could you go into detail about this encounter?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, this was, like I said, Mount Hood National Forest. We were going to go on a 2 to 3 day backpacking trip, remote backpacking trip, fishing trip. And we, so basically this area is about a 5-mile drive into on a really rustic and horrible logging road to a trailhead. And down this trailhead, there's a lake, and that's where we made our base camp. Kind of early on a Friday morning. And we eventually, after we set up camp, we decided to go try and find one of these other lakes in this area. There's about 8 lakes in this area, and got, up above the lake we were camping at. We got up on this ridge line, got completely lost. We were seeing bear sign. One of my buddies was quite afraid of bears. He's not from Oregon or Washington. He's from Boston, and he didn't like the bear thing at all. And so we're up there, we're lost. My buddy from Boston, he actually had a pot pan, was banging it around, and I told him, knock that off. It's annoying. We were all, I always go to the woods armed. I do carry a weapon with me at all times. And so we were lost. we start making our way. Finally, and we hiked about 16 to 17 miles a day, off trail, on trail, off trail, till we eventually, at the end of the day, we we find the lake we're supposed to be fishing, and by the time it's getting dark, so we come down off the mountain, make our way, find the right trail back to our camp, which is a couple of miles away. Set up, finish set up camp again, make some dinner, go to bed around 11:30 after talking about our plans for the following day. And around 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, we hear a clanking sound. And now we're right next to this lake. We all have our separate tents. We're kind of in a triangle formation with, spread out by a couple of feet. My buddy Mitch was closest to the lake. I'm kind of in the middle at the point, and at the other area, just below like a little hill, is my buddy Ian. Ian was passed out. He didn't hear this sound, this clanking sound. But Mitch and he started whispering to me, "Hey, what is that?" And I said, I don't know what that is, but it sounded like two rocks, about that pace, being clanked together. And it's coming from a distance, but it's getting closer and closer and closer. And I don't know the distance, but when it got relatively close to our camp, it stopped. And I'm listening, and that's when I start hearing movement kind of encircling our camp from down low up into this hill and back and forth. And Mitch and I are awake but quiet. And then my buddy Ian, he's snoring away. He didn't hear any of this. Well, after a couple of minutes of this walking around, you hear it kind of moving away, and then you hear that sound again. And it just sounds like two rocks, like two round rocks being smacked together. Not super loud, but loud enough you could hear it. And it gets further and further and further away. And that was it the first night. We eventually fell asleep and woke up next morning. We kind of discussed it, and I'm trying to come up with every answer in my head. Could this have been elk or deer antlers? Could it have been a raccoon? But none of that made sense. The movement I was hearing sounded large. But we're and of course, my buddy Ian thought we were messing with him, which we were not, because he didn't hear a thing. But so we got out the next day. We hit the trail. We find the two lakes we were going to fish, no problem. We had our area kind of down in our mind, so we kind of knew the general area. We knew where the trails were at now, and we go out and fish all day. We come back to our camp in the evening. We're cooking up fish that we'd caught, and once again talk about our plans for the following day. We chat for a while, then go to bed about 11:30 again. And we're all, fast asleep. And I wake up to that sound again. And about that time, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I hear that, sound. And it's getting closer and closer and closer again. And it's just repetitive. My buddy Mitch, again, is awake, and he goes, "Shane, are you awake?" He's whispering. I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "It's back." I said, "I know." So as we're listening, it's getting closer and closer, and it stops again. This time, the movement we were hearing was much louder. Whatever this thing was at the time, I knew it was big. We could hear it crunching. And at one point, my buddy Mitch is hearing something to his left. I'm hearing something to my right coming from the hill. So in my mind, I'm thinking there could be two of whatever the heck this is. And it's just stomping
Shane,
around.
I'm sorry. I have to interrupt you.
Yeah, please do.
I mean, being like a guy into cryptids and Bigfoot, are you not at this point thinking this could be a Sasquatch?
At the time, I didn't know. I honestly didn't know what it was. I don't remember it crossed my mind at that time or not. I was kind of, honestly, I was scared. I didn't know what we were dealing with. And when I described the movement in the woods, it was just large, and it just sounded big. I've been around a lot of black bear in my life. Yep, even up until that point, I've been around elk and deer. This stood out, that the clanking sound, I couldn't put a finger on it. And then this movement, whatever it was, came back a second night in a row. So I'm sure it probably crossed my mind, but in my mind, I was thinking, I never had an experience up until then or encounter. I never in all my years. And so it's hard to rationalize in my brain. What could this be? Well, as this thing's stomping around, and there may be something to my right and something to my buddy's left, the stomping around went quiet. And that's when 5 of the most powerful power knocks, whatever you want to call them, on a tree started coming through. Just bam, and they were in a row, 5 in a row. Bam, 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 and it echoed through this little valley we're in. We had a rock crack across the lake, and you could just hear it echo off that and come right back at us. The undergrowth, the ground in that area is pretty hollow because of the root systems, and you could feel these knocks reverberate underneath your tent. Well, this woke my buddy Ian up by this time. So all three of us are awake. He's kind of freaking out. He doesn't know what this is. And I'm telling him, be quiet, just shut up, And he was not in a good spot.
And Ian's the one from Boston, right? Afraid of bears?
Yeah, correct. He's pretty much freaking out. He's not an outdoorsman or a camper. And I had given him, in hindsight, very poor hindsight, I had given him a pistol to calm his fears. God. Yeah, bad idea. But, yeah, bad idea. Would never do that again. But I realized that he had a pistol in there. But before that happened, so I'm trying to calm him down, and up through the tree line up above us, I hear something coming through the trees from the hill, and it's hitting branches and it's coming down from a distance, and then it thuds right next to my buddy Mitch's tent, and he's right next to the lake. In front of him is a big muddy spot with a bunch of skunk cabbage, and you could hear it hit that ground and thud and it was something solid. And I knew at that time exactly what it was. And even my buddy Mitch goes, "Hey, you know what that was, right?" And I said, "That was a rock," and it hit the mud right next to his tent. And now, oh my gosh!
Were the knocks? I want to go back to the knocks real quick. Were they all coming from the same spot, or were they? I know because you said you heard knocks from two different areas the night before. Or clacking, rather. Were the knocks coming from the same location?
Well, the night before, we may have heard a percussive knock, but I don't want to. It's one of those things I don't remember for a fact that happening. We may have heard a knock the night prior, but it was definitely rock clanking going on both nights. Those knocks were coming from the same spot. There wasn't like a response. It was just, I mean, I've never heard anything like it since because it was so close and so powerful. But yeah, they were just from one location. For sure. Okay,
thanks. Sorry to cut you off there. So then the rock hit. The rock landed. Pretty close to you guys.
Yes, and so it landed real close to my buddy's tent. I'm getting, I'm now the wheels are spinning in my head because there's only so many things that throw rocks. I can only think of one. Out here in North America as a person, but we're way out in the middle of the woods. It's nighttime. We did every night. Ian would build a huge fire up to ward off the bears. He was quite an obnoxious fire, but other than that,
Ian's like, I don't want no bears coming here. He's Ian from Boston.
No, yeah.
That Shane's former friend. He's not his friend anymore now.
He won't go back to the woods now. I haven't talked to him in years, but I don't think he's an outdoors guy at all now. But after that all transpired, I'm sitting there and Ian's still freaking out. So I decide to, first of all, go calm him down, and then two, make sure he's not going to shoot anybody. So I unzip my tent, and as I'm looking around out the front of my tent, I'm hoping and praying I don't see anything. And for a few seconds I didn't, but then almost directly, to my 1 o'clock roughly, I see some movement. And as I lock eyes on it, I see a large hand, an arm, a shoulder, and every couple of seconds or less than that, a head pop out. This arm was around a big Doug fir tree, and I could see the shoulder. And every once in a while, I'd see half of it pop out, swaying back and forth. And as I'm watching it pop out, I'm realizing this thing is massive. I could see hair. I couldn't make out color. I could just make out the hand and the arm and the shoulder, and then this gigantic head and half the body. At that time, I didn't see the whole body pop out, but it was swaying back and forth. The arm and hand would stay on the tree. And I'm looking right at this thing, and I'm in my head, I remember I felt paralyzed from fear. I couldn't move, but I'm just looking at this thing, and it eventually, I don't know if it heard the zipper or if it locked eyes on me. I don't know, but it eventually dropped its arm to its side, came out from behind the tree, and went up the trail, just slowly walked away from the trail. And that was it. At that point, Ian is kind of quiet. I hadn't said anything. I didn't scream. My heart's pounding in my head. And I zip my tent up, and I'm just laying there wondering if this thing's going to come back, what it's going to do next. Nothing happened. I could hear, once I could start finally hearing again, I could hear my buddy Mitch breathing kind of heavy. Ian's breathing heavy, and we just literally sat in our tents. Nobody moved. I think, a couple hours later, I don't think anybody went back to sleep. A couple hours later, when daylight hit, we just collectively got out of our tents, packed up camp and got out of there. There was no other stuff that happened that night, at least nothing I heard. Definitely didn't see anything. And quite honestly, I was freaked out. I didn't want to have a third night of this at that time. I thought if this thing came back and it's definitely a Sasquatch, it came back for 2 nights in a row for a purpose. We shouldn't be here. And so we just, without even talking, we collectively grabbed our stuff and got the heck out of there. And
it's such
that
an interesting story. Because we were just talking about this today.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about, questions that we might want to ask researchers in the future. And the whole thing, the whole fear factor of actually having a Sasquatch experience, like every researcher wants to have. But then when you finally have it, it's not some like little cutesy Sasquatch, cartoon
making
or
coffee or
it's a real live animal that's ginormous and powerful and, just has all of these amazing capabilities, And so, you're kind of like describing what we were talking about today.
Yeah. I mean, it was everything I wanted, but nothing I wanted at that time. It's it's everybody's dream. But at that time, I had never had anything. I've had bear encounters. I've had odd people encounters, stuff like that. Stuff that built me up, gave me a little more of a backbone to be out in the woods and not afraid, respect everything, but not afraid of that. Prepare yourself. I could not prepare myself for that as much as I thought I could. Nowadays, don't get me wrong. Nowadays, I want that to happen again, and I'll be prepared. I didn't have any audio with me, and I didn't have anything, fishing poles and food and tents. If that ever happened again, I do want that to happen again, and I think I've come close. But at that time, no, just I was still maybe they exist, maybe they don't. I don't know. I've talked to people. I really haven't seen much. Maybe they exist, but after that happened, there was no doubting it. There was nothing I could do to say, oh, they don't exist. It was right there in my face. And for how many times have you heard of a 2-night encounter? Not many. And, I thought to myself, well, after months and months of thinking about this, why did that happen? Why 2 nights in a row? And the only thing I could come up with is that we got up on this ridge line above the lake. We're off trail most of the time, hacking through the woods. We disturbed something up on that ridge line with the noise, with us, making noise, arguing, urinating. We left our scent everywhere, banging pots, all that junk. That this thing wanted us out of there. We didn't get the picture the first night. The second night, it hung around a lot longer and got more. I don't use the word aggression, but it gave itself. It let us know that, hey, it's you've overstayed your welcome. Get out of here, and it worked.
So your 2 friends that came with you, I'm not sure if you're still in touch with them or how long you were in touch with them after the experience, but did you guys talk about and did you tell them what you saw? And
I eventually told them. Ian didn't really want to hear about it. He was done. Mitch and I, my buddy Mitch and I don't really talk with any of those guys anymore, but my buddy Mitch and I went out there a few more times. And we went out there. I wanted to see how tall this thing was up against the tree because there was a limb above its head. It was about 7.5 feet tall, big guy or girl. And I found some smashed down marks. I looked for the tree where this thing was smacking, and I may have found it, but I wasn't 100% sure. And we didn't really have anything happen in that area. There's an adjacent lake, though, that, once we got the courage to get, stay out there overnight, and we did. We went out to another lake, which was about about 2 miles away from there. Same trail we took to get there. And we were fishing at this lake with the plan of I was going to place a game camera up at this place and fish and camp a couple of nights. Well, it's not a very big lake. He's on one side of the lake. I'm on the other side of the lake. I got direct view of him. We had walkies. And at one point, he starts hearing something kind of like growling over by him. And I said, well, be careful. I know there's a large black bear in this area. I've seen him. It could be that black bear. Well, he's getting kind of antsy. And we hear a knock, like a big percussive come from somewhere up behind him. And then I'm like, okay. I heard that. And he's like, I'm getting nervous. I'm going to come back around and hang up by you. It's probably not even a 10-minute walk. Well, we both heard a clear whistle. And this is 3:00 in the afternoon, nice sunny day, no breeze. And I'm like, oh man, wow. And as he makes his way back around, I hear another knock from another area, another percussive, and another whistle. Well, as he gets up to me, he's a little shaken up. I'm looking back across the way from where he came from, and there's another kind of a rock slide area. And there's a bunch of these big bushes up there, and this bush is just shaking violently. Wow. And I'm like, oh my gosh! I'm still, I'm like, ooh, are we dealing with Sasquatch? Is this a bear or what? Because bears don't knock like that, and they don't whistle, and they didn't sound like a bird whistle. It sounded like a coarse human whistle, both of them. Well, as we're sitting there watching this, it stops. I'm waiting for something to pop out. Well, up from behind us near our camp, I hear crack, 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 boom. And a large tree comes down from the direction of our camp. We're like, oh, we have to go back that way. So, yeah, we were both pretty freaked out. And so it's starting to get a little darker as the sun's cresting this. We're in another bowl. The sun's starting to go down. We know we have to get back to our camp. So we start making our way down this little game trail to our camp. And sure enough, here's this. And it's a dead tree. Mind you, no wind or anything. It's a large Doug fir that had fallen over. And I'm looking at the base of it, and something looks like it had stood behind this thing. It was flat. All the shavings from the tree. It was really flat looking. Well, my buddy Mitch is like, I'm done. I'm not spending the night here. And I said, well, if we're not spending the night here, we have to get going now because we have a long hike out. It's getting dark. We have to pack up our stuff. I really don't want to be hiking out here in the dark. And so we grabbed our stuff and got the heck out of there. And I don't think Mitch has ever been back out there. I've been back there. I've had some other things happen. Very rarely, I've been out there a lot of times. I try to make a yearly pilgrimage, at least once to twice a year out there. Got some interesting audio, and had a few other interesting things happen over the years, but never another sighting. I can't say I've heard in person more percussives, never had another rock thrown at me, but had some other things happen. So periodically I get reports from that general vicinity. And yeah.
So here's something interesting, Shane. Do you think that they know when you're looking for them? Because it seems like most people who have eyewitness encounters are doing exactly what you were doing the first time. Fishing, hunting, hiking, picking mushrooms, whatever you're doing out in the woods. And it seems like that's the time when you have, as opposed to all of the thousands and thousands of researchers out there with their cameras and audio and, hooping and tree knocking. And what do you think about that?
Oh, I'm so glad. That's such a good observation and point. I love it. Because when I had my experience, eventually I reflected upon the whole scenario and I thought, well, what was I doing? Well, we were acting like campers, normal fishermen. Mm-hmm. Most humans are very predictable. Anything in the woods, it's like when you're out hunting, I hunt black-tailed deer and bear and everything else. They know you're out there and they avoid you. When I'm out off season from hunting, I see deer and stuff all the time. And a lot of times they don't run away from me per se. They'll just kind of hang around, do their thing. So, and as you notably stated, almost all of the real good reports or honest reports or any reports sightings come from people doing average things. Your hunters, your hikers, a lot of hunters too, but your hikers, your campers, people driving on the road. Doing their average thing. They're not actively stomping through the woods and putting up cameras and They're not when they're doing that. You're acting abnormal to what people usually do. So as an animal, whether an apex predator, an ungulate or whatever, you're going to take notice of that stuff because your mannerisms change. Your vibe, everything changes about you doing that because you're focused on something. And animals pick up on that. Humans pick up on that stuff. You see someone acting weird, abnormal, you're going to be like, oh, I need to watch out for this person. Mm-hmm. But if you're just going about your business, you're predictable, you're average. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So when I had my experience and reflecting upon that, I started to realize that there's something to that, to just being normal, and that's where most of your reports come from. Average people doing average things. And so that really changed my direction when it came to research. I mean, I do go out there and look for stuff, but I try to act as normal as I can. When I'm camping, I go about my business, but I don't, and neither do a lot of the other ones, Olympic Project members I go out with. We kind of do the same thing. Occasionally we'll do something out of the norm. One of the things I like to do now is leave the camp, like literally leave the camp, leave whoever's there, whether they're around a fire or they have a group or they're talking, and just peel away, go down a trail, go sit up in a tree stand and watch from afar, because of the amount of reports I've seen over the years where it seems that Sasquatch cannot pay attention to multiple groups. They get flustered, or they're more focused on the group rather than the individual. And I can reflect, Barcatino, that's happened to him twice now, with his research. And his first time he saw one, he peeled away from the camp just to go take a leak, and then happened to see one through his therm. And then up in the Sierras, he saw a group of 3 of them while they were pretty much watching everybody at camp. And I've heard this over and over again. And so that's the only time I will do something, I guess, abnormal, but the focus is still the main camp. When we're in the woods, like average, hikers or explorers, but a lot of places we go, it's kind of hard because it's way off trail and we're going through nasty stuff. So at that point in time, the gig's up. I mean, if they're in the area, and whether it's a Sasquatch or another animal, they're going to know we're there.
Right.
So Shane, can you tell the audience who are the team members of the Olympic Project?
Well, there's about 30 plus of us.
Maybe not name all 30 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you some of the core members, some of the key members that I get out with frequently. That's Chris Spencer. He's one of our audio guys. He does a lot more than just audio, but he's really as much as an expert on audio recording and visually looking at the audio as one can get. So that's kind of his shtick. We have Rebecca Anslick, who's a fantastic field investigator and documenter and explorer, and Todd Hale, who's been around the block a long time. He's worked with Barcatino and a bunch of people, and another great outdoorsman and explorer and investigator. That's kind of the small group that I run with, because these are individuals that work with us in a couple of specific areas. And, that's kind of the core group. We have Derek Randalls that gets out with us a lot. He's been so busy doing other things, work and life, that he's not gone out as much as he wants, but he's still active. Man, there's a lot, we got even people like Mark Marcel involved, who's a kind of the Bigfoot historian, extraordinary guy, absolute extraordinary guy.
We love Mark.
Yeah, Mark's all right. Yeah, we
cool.
tolerate him.
We love Mark.
We love Mark's such a good friend, and Chris too. So
yeah.
So we got a lot of members. Cindy Dosen, Homini Enigma, can't pronounce it. Homini Enigma. She is a hair analysis individual who looks at supposed Sasquatch hair and other animal hair. Probably has the biggest collection of unknown hair that in the U.S. that I know of, hair that we possibly associate with Sasquatch. And Isaac Tien, man, there's just Roland Shaw. There's so many. We have such a good group, and they all have their kind of key role. Some of them are more administrative. We got David Ellis of the Olympic Project, who's another audio guru, fantastic. One of the guys I look up to. And so everybody has their niche, whether it's out in the field or studying stuff at home, looking up stuff, administrative stuff.
And Wes from Squatchometrics.
Wes from Squatchometrics. He's a great affiliate. Another person that I can't speak enough about. His brain is fantastic. He's a data analysis guy by trade, and just a phenomenal guy to work with. I wish he lived stateside. Of course, he lives abroad, but just an amazing individual. Yeah.
Cool. So what do you guys do? So can you just share a few things, your approach to collecting data out in the woods? I mean, what do you guys do when you're out there?
Yeah. So, whether it's just a day trip or, and a lot of most of the time it's not, when it's a group, we're, collectively out there camping and exploring. We usually come up with an area we're going to explore. And so we kind of spread out and search an area, for track, sign, all the while, one of the things we do notably do every single time is as soon as we get out of a vehicle, we're recording. I don't know how many times over the years, and I'm guilty as anybody, getting out of the vehicle, about to set up stuff, and there's a knock or there's a scream or a howl or a whoop. And all I've got is a kind of a story. So we're always recording. We're recording 24/7, no matter what we're doing.
I want to stop you there because I've heard that more than once, that people they're getting out of their vehicle and they hear a knock. So maybe that's perfect reason to have your recorder going, because do you think that's because you're just getting to an area and they're maybe communicating to others?
Or they're saying, "Oh my God, they stopped and they're getting out of the car."
Yeah. I mean, if that is a Sasquatch behavior and it's a Sasquatch doing that, we a lot of ideas out there. We talk within the Olympic Project and we talk outside the Olympic Project, talking to other individuals. But it's almost like, there's somebody here, there's a car, there's an individual. There's maybe warning the group or other Sasquatch possibly. I obviously don't have the absolute answer on that, but there's something to it because it happens enough. It's happened enough to us. It's happened enough to other investigators and just average people. They get out of the car and they're like, "Bam, what was that?" So it's just kind of like they're here or someone's here, sort of percussive. And I think there's something to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know as we're winding down, I wanted to, we can't let you off the hook without talking a little bit about the nest sites. And for those, I was going to share some of the images here for the audience, but I apologize. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties because Shane was kind enough for the book, he did two things. He shared images of the nest site, and he also shared some of the data that they collected that was put together in a presentation. So you guys we'll have links to all that and how you can find the Olympic Project. But can you share a little bit about the nest sites? There's two of them. So, but wherever you want to start with that. Yeah,
there's two nest locations. I mean, a lot of this information's out there for public consumption, but I mean, basically it's a nest area that was the original site was brought to our attention by a timber surveyor. And having worked in this area, we've discovered to date in both areas 24 nests. There a lot of times on these finger ridges where they're found off of a ridge line, they're in groups or clusters, anywhere from like 4 to 7, and they're large. They're made of nothing but huckleberry. They're oval in shape with a deep impression where something's been laying down in them. They range in size from about 4 feet across to almost 8.5, 9 feet across. They're like I said, all about huckleberry, over 1 foot in depth on the outside on the rim, and constructed by something with an opposable thumb. We have found multiple impressions in this area, anywhere from about 14 inches to 16 inches, and even a couple of 12-inch tracks. We have hand impressions from these areas. They were discovered in 2015, brought to our attention May of 2015. We believe they're made in the months of February and March, possibly for a specific purpose. We spent months checking out this whole ridge line and checking out the fingers where these nests are. And that's where we discovered 23 of them, including 2 nests that were mirror images of what was on the ground, but they were built into the huckleberry a couple of feet off the ground, almost like a practice nest. And after documenting and studying these, we started looking at other ravines adjacent to this area with the same features, a seasonal salmon creek down below, a westward facing slope, huckleberry, and just really thick impenetrable areas. And then in February of 2020, after years and years of looking for more nests, my partner Todd Hale and I walked in on something making one of these. And although we came very close to seeing it, it departed the area, and we discovered a new nest in the making that day, where we eventually casted 2 hand impressions, a third partial, and some 14-inch tracks, predominantly in that area, 14 and a half inch tracks. And so, that was striking gold. We were looking for more nests for years. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd walk in on something making one of these things. And the huckleberry breaks just like the original nest area, we're anywhere from about a foot off the ground to 9 feet off the ground. And the huckleberry ranges in size from, a quarter inch to, over 2.5 inches, very thick, no claw marks, no teeth marks. So it took something with an opposable thumb, not just to break this stuff without the teeth and claw marks, but also to formulate these nests of different sizes. People argue with me, oh, it's bear. It says, well, bears don't make multiple nests in one area like that of different sizes. They don't leave, they'll leave their hair behind. The hair found in these nests lacking medulla. It's not bear hair. In fact, it looks very primate human-like. So that's just kind of a brief synopsis of the area. It's absolutely tremendous, amazing site. Here we're looking at February and March, the fall and winter months coming up. We camp and explore year round. We're not seasonal investigators. We do this year round, day in and day out. And February and March are coming up. And that's when I love to be out in the woods, recording and observing within the hopes of possibly coming across more nests. I think we're going to take a little bit different approach this year. Some people would probably frown on this, but I don't really want to disturb whatever's making these nests. I know that sounds silly, but it's kind of a personal thing. I know Sasquatch exists. If they're making nests, which I do believe they do occasionally, not all the time, it takes a lot of work to put these things together, and I really don't want to disturb that. I want to come in after fact and collect the data I can from that. If it so happens I walk in on one being made, I'll be ready to go, record that, video it, so that it won't be just the nests themselves. As we progress further in the Olympic project with the audio aspect that we're doing, the recordings, and everything else that we've collected and everything we're doing, we want to get one of these things on therm or on video. That's our main goal right now. We're not out to shoot one of these things or kill that. I think that even if we were, that'd be a very, very, very difficult task. And we're not. I want to record one of these things on camera. I want to get one on therm so it adds to our portfolio knowledge and data. And without sounding arrogant, I think we've come very close, and I think we can do this. Whether it's me or another individual in the Olympic project, I really don't care. But with some of these new methods and ideas and things we're trying, experiments, we got some really cool ones, really cool ideas coming up. And with the equipment we have in our possession, I think it's a matter of time before we get that really neat footage.
Yeah. So with all this research you're doing, and and all the stuff that you probably have coming up, how can people follow you to see all of this upcoming stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, they can, we're not the best of updating the public per se. We do work with other groups and individuals outside the Olympic Project. But you can check us out on the olympicproject.com website. We do periodically update people on there. Of course, you could find me on Instagram or on Facebook, as well as, some of the other individuals like Chris Spencer. He has a YouTube channel. It's called Toutle Valley Skookum on YouTube, where he shares a lot of this stuff and also his audio work. I'm updating our Olympic Project YouTube page to start sharing some stuff there. Where
are you speaking at? Do you guys have any engagements coming up?
Yeah, David Ellis and myself will be speaking at the Sasquatch Summit in Ocean Shores, Washington, come November, I think 17th, 18th, and 19th. And then Squatch Fest in Kelso, Washington, the end of January. And there's going to be some great speakers there. You got Matt Pruitt speaking, Dr. Meldrum. Oh, and I forget some of the others, but Michael Freeman will be there. That'll be a great venue. So, come out and meet up and talk. Love to see some people there and share your stuff.
Yeah, as expected. We didn't even get into so much of it, but this was awesome.
This was so great, Shane. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing everything. You're such a great speaker, such a great communicator, and so fascinating to hear all of your awesome encounters and research.
Well, hey, thank you, Tim and Dana, so much. Like I said, it's been a pleasure being on here, and thanks for allowing me on.
Well, thank you for everything you do, Shane, because you're like I said, you're just making a difference out there, and you've been so kind and humble and just generous to us too as well. So we appreciate you.
I again appreciate the kind words. You guys are fantastic and awesome, and thanks for including me. I'm really looking forward to your next edition of Bigfoot Influencers. That's I'm excited about that.
Yeah, there'll be a few more of your friends in there. So I haven't spilled the beans yet. So I haven't let anyone know who's in it yet. But I can say
they deserve it.
Folks in there from the Olympic Project.
Yep.
So
Great.
Cool.
All right,
Thank you
Shane,
so
thank
much.
you so much.
All right,
Thanks.
take care. Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, they're doing so much out there. There's a few group, we've had a couple of David Ellis and Chris Spencer on already, and they're just out in the woods doing things, and
Yeah.
they're collecting data. And Wes, well, in the book I had Wes put together some data, because Wes his thing's called Squatchometrics, his group, and
Right.
he just takes all this, collects data from all the reports that are going on around the world, and puts them all in place. And he's got a whole thing about the Olympic project. So it's awesome. We thank you guys.
Thanks, guys, for joining us. Hope you learned something new.